wanted to make a video on the UBI concept that Andrew Yang has been proposing. He is probably the first candidate I have ever truly cared about in my life. So from my perspective, that's a big deal. You know, usually I don't think that politics is at all the road forward. Usually I think it's extremely outdated and the people in it are regressive and they tend to look backwards and tend to move us backwards and all these other things. And that's not entirely true, because obviously you cannot move backwards. You know, everything is constantly moving you forwards. But I feel like, you know, like with Trump and whatnot, this whole concept of building a wall just seems ridiculous to me. Like, that seems like a massive ego trip. It feels like a fear tactic. It feels like it's a response to fear, and I am a firm believer in never doing something because you're afraid. I think that's a terrible reason to take a step. You should do something because you genuinely care about it and you genuinely want it or genuinely want to try it. I definitely think if you're afraid of trying something, that's an indicator that you probably should move forward with it because you see potential in it. And it depends on the type of fear, obviously. I mean, if you're afraid, like you genuinely think you might get hurt or something, don't move forward. That's a different kind of fear. But if it's, I want this, but I'm scared, that kind of fear is something that you have to work through. So, obviously, use your intuition, use your gut, and use your brain on this one, because it's not exactly a straightforward concept. But back to the concept of UBI. So Andrew Yang, he is a Democratic presidential candidate at this point in time, and his like number one issue that he speaks about is the concept of universal base income. That's what UBI stands for. Universal base income is the idea that each person, because they are a citizen of the country, essentially gets a specific amount of money every month or every year, depending on how you set it up. But his concept is every month. A certain amount of money every month that they can therefore reinvest into local businesses, that they can use to pay off their bills, they can use to pay off their house. I mean, they can use it however they need to. This is kind of like a basic support structure saying, hey, you're human and we believe you're worthwhile, so we're going to invest in you. That's how I view it. He calls this UBI concept the freedom dividend, which I think is a brilliant term to use, because what he's saying is essentially, as Americans, we are shareholders in the wealth of the U.S. And it's important that, like in business, we give dividends to the owners of the U.S. You know, we give dividends and we support the people who created us. Similar to a business. If the business is doing well and gives dividends to its shareholders, that's considered to be good management, because they're saying, hey, you helped us get to where we are, to the shareholders, and now we're going to reward you for it. And in truth, all of us, in one way or another, have helped the U.S. in some way. And I know that a lot of people have this major objection saying, you know, if you give somebody something for free, they're just going to blow it or waste it away or spend it on drugs or whatever the case. That's actually the number one objection that I get from people when I talk about UBI and Andrew Yang. They tell me, well, people are just going to spend it on drugs. And I'm like, seriously? That is such a ridiculous response. And the reason why I say that's ridiculous is because, sure, there might be some people who take their UBI or take their freedom dividend and spend it on drugs, but more than likely those people have already been getting drugs, have already been spending all of their money on drugs. So saying that UBI is going to get more people into using drugs is ridiculous, because if you haven't been using drugs, getting more money is not going to make you go, oh, now I have the money to buy drugs. It's ridiculous. That's like saying somebody that doesn't drink gets $1,000 and is then going to start. Or somebody doesn't smoke, gets $1,000 and is then going to start smoking cigarettes. I mean, it's ludicrous. Why would you do that? If you don't want to do drugs, you won't do drugs. If you're already doing drugs, sure, you might spend $1,000 on more drugs, but more than likely at that point, it's because you either have A, developed a habit, or B, are so freaking depressed that you can't get out of it. More than likely what's going to happen, though, as far as drug use goes, particularly with somebody like Andrew Yang, who is talking about increasing mental health in our society and, say, helping people who are addicted to opioids and stuff, which is a medical problem. This is something that medicine actually causes addiction with on many occasions. He's talking about helping those people overcome their addiction, to move past it, to provide, say, what's that called? Rehab. To provide, say, rehab to somebody who is addicted. And whenever somebody tells me, well, hey, if you give people a lot of money, they're just going to blow it away, they're going to spend it on drugs and all these other things, I'm like, well, what would you do with it? Always start with you. If you got $1,000, what would you do with it? If you would spend it on drugs, I totally think it's legitimate to say that other people would do the same. If you wouldn't spend it on drugs, though, why would you assume that everybody else would? And if you would spend it on investing more into, say, your own business, or into other businesses, or personal development, or whatever the case may be, why would you assume that anybody else would do anything else? As somebody who would take, say, $1,000 dividend and reinvest it into, like, my YouTube channel, into my work as an author, into my marketing campaigns, I would put my money into avenues which can potentially stimulate the economy further. And even if you're somebody who would spend, say, 90% of your money on drugs, you're still going to be putting 10% into food. And that 10% could be sufficient to stimulate the economy to a very large extent. And then, if you are somebody who is addicted to drugs, or has been on drugs due to depression, insecurity, which personally, the only reason I would get into drugs was because I felt so insecure and needed to escape from life. So I therefore assume everybody else would be on drugs for similar reasons. So if you are somebody who is on drugs, once you have that $1,000, it comes with an innate sense of worth. And the reason it does this is because the UBI would be universal, meaning everybody gets it no matter their income level. And a lot of people have objections to that, and we can go into that in a second. But when something is universal, there is no stigma around it. And to a certain extent, it's not like somebody's telling you you're not good enough, and so therefore they're providing support. Instead, it's like saying, hey, you're human and therefore valuable, so we're going to invest in you. And the psychology of that action is sufficient to bring a lot of people out of a quasi-depressed state, or at least offer them the potential to move forward in a more positive direction. So you'd actually decrease the number of people who are buying drugs or all these other things, because they no longer have this idea that they're worthless and useless. That's going to be huge. The amount of people who feel this way is astronomical. I mean, the reason I started a YouTube channel was because I was trying to help people to not feel this way. I mean, even the people I know who work a 9-to-5 job often feel this way. And many of them go home and get blackout drunk. I mean, I can't even tell you how common that was in a lot of the semi-truck driving jobs that I was in, where people would drive, go home, drink themselves to essentially knockout position, and then wake up in the morning with a hangover and come to work. That sounds like a terrible idea, let alone unsafe. So this is not something that only exists in the fleets of unemployed people. This exists across the board in all these different segments. So even this concept of, as technology takes over our jobs, we can retrain people and put them back into the work environment, I personally think that's a terrible idea, because if you're just having somebody work for the sake of earning money, they become depressed. And if we're saying that in order to support people, in order to move the world forward, in order to make sure everybody has enough to get by, that we have to give them a job even though a robot is better suited, you're creating a whole world of people who feel completely expendable. So we need to instead transition the way in which we earn money. We need to stop saying that jobs are the answer, because they're not this time. And I get that a lot of people are like, but history says this is how this will go. And I understand why you look to history to say this is what's going to happen now, but in truth, we have never been here before. And every time that something like this has happened, it has been brand new. So even though it worked out, and even though this time it will work out as well, we don't need to go through the turmoil that history indicates will come through a shift like this. I don't know how many people ended up dead, depressed, broken, homeless, or whatever the case may be during the last industrial revolution. I mean, this one is going to be on a much bigger scale, and it's not just going to be here in the US. This is going to be a global issue because technology is being spread across the world. We have this thing called the internet, which you're watching this video on, which provides free information to pretty much everybody with internet access. That is a huge opportunity. That is a huge gift that we have never possessed before as a society. So saying that things are going to be the same as they were last time is not helpful. It is not beneficial to us to say that. And I'm not trying to get you guys scared, because I do believe no matter what, things will work out. I just think it's time that we start changing them consciously rather than just letting life get us there. Because more than likely, if we let the rest of the world or society or whatever the case may be determine how we get there, is going to be challenging. It's going to be hard. There's going to be a lot of struggle. And I'm saying we have the mental capacity, we have the education and the knowledge to make this transition without all of the struggle. We can get there. And it's not necessarily that nobody will struggle, but we can do it with a lot less. And we can do it a lot faster if we do it now. And I think Andrew Yang's concept of UBI, this concept of providing people income because they're human, is a really good step forward. This is going to be a huge game changer in the long run if he ends up as president. And I really hope that he does, because the amount of things that can happen, the amount of growth that we're allowing people to have, the amount of human capital we'll be freeing up to invent new things and shift the way our society works will be astronomical. And it will provide value that we can't even possibly predict right now, because we have never seen it before. So if you're looking to the past to determine what tomorrow will look like, it's not going to be helpful. I'd argue it has never been helpful to look at history for examples of how tomorrow will go, because history is only ever the story of what was, not what is or what can be. We need to look at what can be. We need to eliminate the word impossible in many regards and say, we don't know. And from that perspective, we now allow the world to shift and evolve at a much faster pace with our cooperation, rather than fighting against the transition and creating a harder life for everybody else. So yes, I am a big supporter of Andrew Yang. I love the concept of UBI, and I get that some of you guys are scared. I get that most of you guys are probably scared in one regard or another. Either you don't want your money taken away, or you don't want to not have enough for tomorrow, or you're afraid of this whole new society that we have no way of predicting and what it will look like. Because we're transitioning to a world where it's possible money won't exist anymore. I mean, that's a very scary thing, because we've never seen that kind of society before. And I don't mean that we've never lived at a point where there wasn't money. I mean that we've never lived at a point where bartering wasn't a thing. And that is the world that we're moving into, is where bartering is no longer needed, where struggle is no longer tied to survival, where the things you want aren't necessarily achieved through purchase of some sort. This is a whole new world we're looking at. And maybe you don't believe me, maybe you don't agree, but I've always said, even if the possibility of this exists, I would think it would be much better for us to be prepared now than to wait for it to happen and see the turmoil that comes along the way. We have a chance to step out in front of this, and that's why I support Andrew Yang, and that is why I'm excited for the first time ever about a presidential candidate, because he's the first person I've ever seen that I feel like is moving us forward in a positive, detectable, identifiable way. He is trying to do the finance side. I and many others are trying to do the spiritual side. I'm trying to help you develop yourself as a person to become the best person that you can be, and he's providing the financial aspects that can help us all reach that point. So I'm going to end the video there. If you guys have any questions, I feel like I missed something that I planned to talk about, so I might end up coming back at some point. If you notice it in this video, feel free to leave that in the comment section, and I will I will be glad to come back and address that in a future video as well. If you are a Yang supporter, I would love to have you write a comment, hashtag YangGang. Totally love you guys. I would love to have this video shared. I'd love for people to recognize the value and potential within this candidate, because, genuinely, I am excited. I really, really want him to be president. I'm super excited to see what kind of world he could help us create. And with the help of, say, teachers like myself, Abraham Hicks, Lisa Nicolo, Bob Proctor, many, many teachers, Teal Swan, with the help of all of us, we can reach that point. We can become the kind of people who can live in that society, and we can turn into, say, the Star Trekians of tomorrow. I don't think it's going to be quite like Star Trek was, but I definitely think we're moving towards that kind of society, and I'm excited to see what it looks like. And you might call me crazy for saying that, but, this is what my experience has taught me, and I have to go with my gut and my instinct, and that is what it's telling me, is that this is the direction we're moving in. So, yes, I might have completely discredited myself in some of your guys' eyes, but I don't care. I think this is really exciting time. I think that this transition is going to be really cool. I think it could be potentially challenging, but in the end, I think it's going to be best for us and lead to a much better world than we've ever seen before. So, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to click the like button, that little thumbs up indicator, and then also subscribe to my channel for future videos. Click the notification bell as well so that you're notified when new videos are posted. I know that my posting schedule has decreased a little bit in the past couple weeks because I have been less inspired to, say, make videos and have been going off in random directions and whatnot. So me posting 3 times a week has kind of been decreased to 1. More than likely I'll go back to 3 at some point. But from this perspective, from this particular life state, I'm feeling drawn to other things a little bit more, so I'm going to go with energy on that. And if you've seen my other videos, you probably know what I mean. But yes, so make sure to subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell. I do still post once a week though, so check those out on Fridays at noon Pacific Standard Time, and you can see all my new videos. And then finally, if you are willing to support me financially, I would love to have you over on my Patreon page. I have also signed up to be a Mary Kay consultant, so if you are interested in Mary Kay products, I like their skincare and lip and hand stuff, so do what you will. Not a big makeup person, obviously. I'm just wearing mascara, so I don't do much in the way of makeup anymore. But yes, so you can totally support me on Patreon. You can become a customer on my Mary Kay site. Feel free to leave a comment if that is something that you're interested in. Feel free to leave a comment on UBI stuff if that's of interest to you as well. And then feel free to post any questions you have in the comment section as well. And I'm going to end it there. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye.